Hello, hello. Perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Sondra Morris, and I am the publisher of Tag Magazine. I'll be hosting today's event on behalf of News is Out. So, our first guest today is actually going to be Mark Segal. Mark is one of the most influential figures in LGBTQ media and activism. A pioneer of the gay rights movement, Segal was one of the original participants in the 1969 Stonewall Uprising. He went on to found the Philadelphia Gay News in 1976, which remains one of the country's oldest and most respected LGBTQ plus newspapers. Throughout his career, Segal has combined journalism and activism to advance LGBTQ plus visibility and equality. In the 1970s, he became known for his ZAPs. These were direct actions demanding representation on national television. They helped pave the way for queer visibility in the media. His memoir, And Then I Danced, Traveling the Road to LGBT Equality, chronicles his 5 decades of advocacy. Segal has served on numerous national boards, including the National Gay Newspaper Guild and the LGBT History Archive and Smithsonian. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, Sondra. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm doing great with all these great people watching us. How can it be anything but great?
I love your energy. Are you ready to start talking to the people?
Absolutely. What do you got for me?
All right, so my first question for you. You were there on the front lines of the Stonewall Uprising. When you look back at it now, all these years later, what moments or feelings from those nights still stay with you?
Uh, Great question. I think you got to understand how I got to Stonewall, which was I'd only been living in New York for 6 weeks. I before then I was living in Philadelphia, and growing up in Philadelphia as a teenager in the 1950s and 1960s, you began to wonder who you were. And so there was no internet, so you went to the library. This place called the library was a building with a lot of books. And you went inside, and when I was growing up in the 60s, you could only find maybe 5 books that dealt with who I was. And it said, let's see, they were in the criminology department, they were in the religious department, morality department, psychiatric department. And so I left that library feeling like, I might be mentally ill. I'm probably a criminal. I have no morals. Not very good for a 13-year-old boy. So I at least understood immediately why I had to be, I didn't know the word, in the closet. As in those days, 99% of our community was for those very reasons. Um, so when I was 18, I decided I'm going to go to a place where there are other people like me. And I'd seen a show on PBS called The David Susskind Show where they had real live homosexuals. And they said they lived in a place called Greenwich Village. And so graduate high school, right up to New York, checked into the YMCA on 34th Street, got the subway down to 4th Street, and went looking for the gay people. And eventually I found them on Christopher Street. And Christopher Street in those days was the heart of our gay neighborhood. And I did what other 18-year-olds did. I hung out with my friends every single night. And what that meant was walking up and down Christopher Street from maybe 8 o'clock until midnight. And at midnight, you would always go to a place called Stonewall. And you went to Stonewall for one very good reason. Out on that street, our street, Christopher Street, people could come in from the other boroughs and maybe harass you, bash you. And as you're walking the street, your friends, police might come along and say, move along, move along. Or if you're in a group of people, say, you people aren't allowed to congregate. Those were the problems of walking up and down Christopher Street when I was 18 years old. When you went into Stonewall, we thought we were safe. It was a place where we could hug, hold hands, kiss, dance. What 18-year-old kid does not want to dance their ass off? And in New York in 1969, Stonewall was the only place where gay people could dance. And we thought we were safe. After all, it was a mafioso place, illegal, had no license, because you couldn't give a license. If you served a homosexual, you couldn't have a license in the state of New York. Um, and so it was a mafia-controlled bar. It was dirty, watered-down drinks, but we thought we were safe until that night. That night, the police barged through the doors. They started banging up the bar. They took bottles and threw them. They took people and took them by the collar and threw them up against the wall. I was frightened. I was a little 18-year-old kid from Philadelphia. What did I know? It was scary. And I was frightened until I got outside. And outside, I got angry. Why are we being treated like this? Why, shouldn't I have called the police? Oh, these were the police. You know, why do, aren't police people supposed to protect us? Um, and so I was there with a few other people around the doors. Anybody who had a job or family in the area, they ran for the subway. People stayed, marginalized people, street kids, who I was at that time, young activists, what today we would call the trans community. Uh, but the police wanted to leave after they'd done all the work they could possibly do to harm us. And they opened the door, and for whatever reason, we just started throwing things at the door. Nothing big. I mean, coins out of your pockets, maybe a stone from the street or an empty can of soda. But they retreated into that bar. And this went on for about 3 or 4 times. And for me, um, the lucky thing I say today is that my good friend Marty Robinson came up to me. And Marty handed me a piece of chalk. And he said, Mark, I want you to go up and down Christie Street and write on the street and the walls, tomorrow night Stonewall. And I did, and that's when I became an activist, but I didn't even know what an activist was at that moment. I did 30 days later when we created the first march from Washington Square to Stonewall. But then I didn't know. I guess that doing all those things that you mentioned in my resume as I came on, and trying to pull it all together and answer your question. I think I've told you what I thought about that night, from frightening to someone who said, it's the counterculture 1960s. Black are fighting for the rights, Latinos are fighting for the rights, women are fighting for the rights. What about us?
Yeah.
That's what happened to me that night. Looking back on it now, and that first year, which was revolutionary in its sense, from Stonewall came Gay Liberation Front, and we created the community we have today. There was no community before Gay Liberation Front. There was this march in Philadelphia, the city I came from. I didn't even know about it. From 65 to 69, 100 people every July 4th. That was what our community was like as activism back in 1969. It would take 1 year from Stonewall to a change. From those 100 people, Stonewall, then Gay Liberation Front organizes. It creates the first medical committee to help the community, legal committee to help the community, trans community to help the community, youth committee to help the community, social events to help the community. Then at the end of that year, to celebrate the community we had built, we created the first Gay Pride, which was Christie Street Liberation Day Committee. And on that day, 15,000 marched.
Wow.
From 1 year, 100 to 15,000. And so, what am I most proud about? I guess I could say right now that I didn't expect those 15,000 that day. We were scared. We thought we would be harassed if we marched outside the village. And remember, we were marching from Stonewall all the way to Sheep's Meadow in Central Park, across the city. I think everything that we have today, I don't think I ever expected we would have. I'm amazed. I guess the best way to describe is tell you how I came out to my parents, which is very easy. I was running a group called Gay Youth at the time. I was 19, and I was advising gay youth various things. So I decided, better come out to my parents. So I called my parents on the phone. Very brave of me. Um, My father picked up the phone. I said, Dad, I have something to tell you. He said, what is it? I said, Dad, I'm gay. He said, I knew that already. Here, talk to your mother. She picks up the phone. I say, Mom, I'm gay. And she says, well, she was quiet. I said, Mom, why are you so quiet? And she says, I love you, but I'm afraid you'll be lonely when you're old. If Mom was alive today, I'd be able to say, Mom, I'm definitely old. Mom, I'm happy. And guess what, Mom? I'm legally married. Legally married, Mom. And I know she'd be very happy.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right, my next question for you is this. You went from being on the streets to running one of the country's leading LGBTQ plus newspapers. When did it click for you that publishing could be its own form of activism?
I don't think it ever clicked for me. I think it always was, because I went from Stonewall Gay Liberation Front, doing the zaps, disrupting TV shows, and then starting a newspaper. And so to me, the newspaper was another form of activism. A Gay Liberation Front, what did we do? Well, we said we had to be out loud and proud. Well, how more out loud and proud can you be than have a newspaper and have it on the streets? I mean, that's out loud and proud. Not only that, it was a way to help connect our community, to get us to communicate and speak with each other, and to debate the issues, and so we could all share our view. It was also a way for us to showcase what was going on in our community and open eyes where people didn't realize that they had to be opened. I mean, we sent one of the earliest things we ever did was to send a reporter to sleep on the benches in a park with homeless LGBT youth. And then we were the first paper, which we get a lot of credit for this, to do a story on lesbian nuns. That was but these are, we dealt with trans issues, we dealt with discrimination at the bars very early on. So to me, having a newspaper is activism, lock, stock, and barrel.
Well, speaking of media and the activism that you've done through media, in the 70s, your zaps on major TV networks pushed visibility in a way few people had done before. What do you think that kind of bold, visibility driven activism would look like today? Or what does it already look like? What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, are we going to get back to a time where we have to disrupt TV stations or networks or podcasts or whatever to get our voices heard, to make people realize that they're trying to eliminate us once again? I mean, we're already being erased by various government entities. Uh, the story of Stonewall has been censored by the federal government on the National Park Service's website. When you type in Stonewall, there's a story of Stonewall there, but there are no trans people. They've totally been erased. So we need to do something to start standing up and talking about that and telling the government they can't do that.
I agree with you 100%. All right, we have time for one more question before I move to our next guest. Um, you've seen queer media grow, struggle, and reinvent itself more than once. What lessons from those early days do you think could help sustain LGBTQ plus journalism now?
I think media is going through incredible changes, not just LGBT media, but all media uh, that you could think of. We're beginning to embrace the new world of internet and podcast and social media. Um, I think we have to change. We have to get involved in all of those things, whatever they are. And basically, if we're wanting to communicate with our community, we have to be where our community is. So we have to go where they are, and let them see what we have. And if what we're offering in the idea of news about their community and for their community and features for and about their community and about them, if they want to take that, I think we have a very compelling story to tell. I mean, if you're going to want to know what's going on in your city hall that's going to affect you, or your community center, or your medical services, or your legal services, your LGBT media is the place to go.
I agree. Mark, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And now I'm going to move on to our next guest. So I'm pleased to welcome Victor Salvo. Victor is a Chicago based activist and preservationist, best known as the co founder and executive director of the Legacy Project, the world's only outdoor museum dedicated to LGBTQ plus history and culture. Installed along Chicago's North Halsted Street, the Legacy Walk celebrates the achievements of LGBTQ plus individuals through bronze plaques and educational programming that honors contributions often erased from mainstream history. Salvo has a storied history in LGBTQ plus activism, including serving as chair of the Chicago, Illinois contingent of the National March on Washington for Lesbian and Gay Rights in 1987. He was also involved in the NAMES project, the creation of Open Hand Chicago, Act Up Chicago, and the Lesbian and Gay Progressive Democratic Organization. In 1998, Salvo was inducted into Chicago's LGBT Hall of Fame. Under Salvo's guidance, the Legacy Walk has become the largest LGBTQ plus site on Earth to be declared a historic landmark. The Legacy Project continues to expand nationally through initiatives like Legacy Wall Traveling Exhibit, digital archives, and LGBTQ inclusive public school curriculum, all of which ensure that queer history remains visible and celebrated for generations to come. Victor, welcome so much. Oh, you might be muted, my friend. So sorry, gonna interrupt. Can we unmute Victor, please? Victor, go ahead and try again. Let's see if we can hear you.
All right, can you hear me now?
Thank you. Welcome. I'm glad we got this fixed.
Yeah, for some reason my computer won't actually work, but my phone turned itself on and started recording me. So how creepy is that? So thank you for that lovely introduction. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And thank you for taking the time to talk today. Are you ready to get started?
Oh yeah.
All right, let's roll. The Legacy Project has transformed public space into a living museum of LGBTQ plus history. What first sparked that idea for you, and what convinced you that it could actually happen?
Well, it was inspired at the March on Washington in 1987, when within the same sort of 36-hour span we had the ACT UP demonstration at the Supreme Court protesting the Hardwick decision, right, at the crescendo of AIDS activism, as well as the first day that would come to be called National Coming Out Day, when we were being asked to share and embrace a heritage of LGBTQ identity and achievement. And it was the first time the Names Project quilt was ever actually put on display for us to see in physical terms what the actual Holocaust was doing to our community. And all these things struck me as being living history unfolding in front of our very eyes. And as we're being expected to embrace our combined legacy, none of us knew what it was. We had never been taught about it in school. We had no idea. We thought we were really hip if we knew that Rock Hudson was gay. Big stretch of the imagination there for Liberace, too. And it started me on a personal mission very long time ago to create an outdoor public space where people could see and read about people who, some of which were driven by their activism spirit, others of whom would never really identify themselves as activists. They were just people who did what they did and happened to be queer while doing it. And yet, as you said, their full breadth of their stories were denied to history. Those parts were always redacted from their stories. So that led to the idea of the Legacy Walk and my obsession with creating bronze memorials to celebrate these individuals' lives. And today, the Legacy Walk has been around now. I think we just did our 13th dedication, where we added Henry Gerber
Do we want
and as well as international. And it just became something that has taken on a life of its own now, especially because we co-write the curriculum for the state of Illinois, which requires the inclusion of these narratives in public school education. So there's, in addition to all these people, there are right now 400 lesson plans that are digitally integrated into the both the traveling installation as well as the outdoor museum. So most of our tours, because we give guided tours, are actually for school children, middle and high school kids who come. And being an old codger myself, it is really it's very gratifying to see, and uh, and to know that as Mark said, we're actively in the process of being erased now in every place you go. And as I'm very proud to tell people, bronze cannot be erased. Those plaques are there, and hopefully more people will discover them and come to Chicago.
that is absolutely amazing. So one of the coolest things you mentioned that there are international, that the Legacy Walk has affected people all over. One of the coolest things about the Legacy Walk to me is that it honors figures across time, geography, and identity. So how do you approach representing such a wide and diverse community with care and with balance?
Well, I know a lot of people, which helps a lot. Being alive a long time has that benefit, and we've all been engaged with so many different communities and have friends from so many different backgrounds and walks of life, and we're always having these conversations. And most of the people that are on the walk, remember when I started out, I didn't know any of this. A lot of people think I'm this like big historian, and that's, I guess, by default I certainly am right now. But it's mostly just learning from stories that people have shared with me, and it's been a process of discovery. So as we go through year after year, the people who are considered candidates for induction are actually chosen by an international committee of people who evaluate everyone in the system according to basically their field of contribution or fields of contribution, and vote for them, and then they kind of get a ranking and a weighting, and as time goes on, some people eventually do get on the legacy walk, and then the next person in line sort of bumps up in that particular field, and because it is broadly representative, both demographically as well as different orientations and gender identities and national and international. There's a wide variety of people to choose from. Then it really just comes down to finding individuals who are interested in sponsoring that person, because we don't actually raise the money for any one memorial. We create all the content around it, and then we match private donors to the process. So sometimes those are individuals of means who just have an obsession about a certain person. Most of the time, it's actually groups of friends who really love a particular person and they pull the money together to do it. A couple of times it's been corporations that want to be supportive of the community, and as, of course, they get recognized as being the donors behind it. So there's a variety of different ways in which it all kind of comes together, but it can take sometimes 3 years
Wow.
to line up the sponsorship for one person, because you have to have all these conversations, and you have to, we have to teach ourselves. We have to learn a lot about what's going on, and people that are out there, and it's always this incredible process of discovery. And we're also honestly really mindful of demographics and optics and all the stuff that you really just need to be very serious and intentional about, because that's the price you pay for living in a pluralistic society that has lots of different kinds of people in it. And you want to make sure that it's relevant for everyone. And we're really proud of the results that we've achieved, and the number of people from so many different backgrounds that we have. So,
Yeah, you should be. It's absolutely amazing. So the Legacy Project has inspired others to create their own local tributes. What advice might you have for communities that want to start something similar to what you've done, and a way to honor their own local queer history?
Well, I got to tell you, this is a very hard climate to do it in. I thought coming out of the darkest days of AIDS and beginning to have this conversation were difficult. But we were fortunate in Chicago that we had, simply by virtue of our activism, forged so many ties within city government, um, even up to and including Mayor Richard Daley, who uh, had been really arguably an enemy of this community for many years, and then he kind of went through a personal epiphany, which is a whole separate conversation that I'll tell you about over a drink sometime. But he had a really he had a real change, and I'm not saying that he wasn't also counting votes, and he was a politician, right? Um, but the original idea for the rainbow pylon structures on the Legacy Walk, to which our bronze memorials are attached, were actually his. He was the one who proposed the creation of the first architecturally defined queer community in the world, where the city invested millions of dollars to erect these sort of phallic-looking rocket ship type things. Which is, I always say, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. That's really pretty much how these pylons came into existence. They were either loved or hated by most people, but they became the perfect mounting post to which our bronze memorials are attached. And once we had the mayor's backing, and then, of course, the subsequent backing of all the people since then, we were able to pretty much just work the system and be patient. The fact that queer people are very stubborn and very prepared and know how to dot their I's and cross their T's really did help. But it was also a time when there was an expansion of our identity. And I always say, regardless of whatever laws we passed, I pretty much put the success of our evolution on the names Will, Grace, and Ellen, because the presence of those personalities sort of transformed the cultural landscape around us, and the fact that AIDS forced out an entire generation of people out of the closet. Suddenly, it was just no longer all that odd for there to be gay people around you, and for you to recognize that there were gay coworkers or other gay people in your family and things. So the environment was very supportive for something this dynamic and this unique to take place. Today, however, there is an entirely different ball of wax out there, and I don't know how easy it would be. Clearly, you have to have your connections within city government. You need some champions, which we certainly were fortunate to have, to begin having those conversations. And especially if you're doing like local folks, it may not be as difficult as opposed to what we were doing. Virtually no one is actually from Chicago. Relatively speaking, on the Legacy Walk, there's only four, and 4 out of the 55. So there was a lot of like, well, why does this matter to Chicago? And we were basically saying, well, Chicago is an international community. We have people from every one of these ethnic groups here in Chicago, and these stories are no less valuable just because they didn't happen to live in Chicago when they did that. So that part of it, I think, was difficult for some people to wrap their heads around. Also, because queer history has been so redacted, most people were unaware that there was anybody to celebrate, let alone people like Alan Turing or Frida Kahlo or Michelangelo. Any of these people that you could have these conversations about, that part of their story was removed. So it's a huge learning curve for people to not only learn the basic information, but then to understand why it's important, why kids deserve to see people like themselves cast in bronze, because that had never happened for queer people before. So doing it today, I think I would actually really emphasize the fact that no matter where you live or where you're from, there are kids there that are growing up and they're coming into their own now at a time of extreme regression. And this is a positive the positive thing that you can do. And it's the truth. It may be an inconvenient truth for a lot of people, but it's the truth. We didn't just wake up and pull these people out of thin air. These people have had scores of books written about them. The problem is that nobody knows the books are there to read. So all we're really doing is taking other people's information and repackaging it into a very public um, venue, for them to come and see. And the collective effect of all of them in one spot has created this incredible echo chamber because they're all so different. I always liken it to eating potato chips. You have one and you want to read the next one. You want to read the next one. So it becomes very dynamic, and you're struck by how diverse it is, and that really is, I think, its greatest strength.
I agree, and I think that's beautiful advice for people looking to do something similar in such a trying time. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today.
Well, I'm honored to be included, honestly.
All right, and with that, I'm going to move on to our next guest. So I am welcoming now Martha Shelley. There we go. Martha Shelley is a writer, activist, and one of the early leaders of the gay liberation movement. Born in Brooklyn, New York, she became involved in the feminist and anti-war movements of the 1960s and quickly emerged as a vocal advocate for lesbian rights. Shelley was a member of the Daughters of Billettes and later a co-founder of the Gay Liberation Front. She organized the first post-Stonewall protest march 1 month after the historic events in 1969 and contributed to the creation of Come Out, the Gay Liberation Front newsletter. In 2023, Shelley's memoir, We Set the Night on Fire, Igniting the Gay Revolution, was published to critical acclaim. Welcome, and thank you for agreeing to talk to us today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, it's my pleasure. You ready to get started? All right, let's go. You helped organize the first Christopher Street Liberation Day March in 1970. What do you remember the most about that day and the energy behind it?
Okay, wait a minute, that's wrong. The people who organized the 1970 march were Ellen Brody and Craig Rodwell. Ellen is still with us, Craig Rodwell is deceased. What I organized was the first protest march 1 month after Stonewall. What happened was I had been passing by the Stonewall and saw these young people throwing things at cops, and I thought it was an anti-war protest. Lord knows I'd been involved in lots of those, and that was Saturday night. Monday morning, I found out from the newspapers that it was a gay riot, and I thought, oh my God, it's us, it's our turn. So I called the woman who was running the local chapter of Daughters of Billettes, and she said, and I said, we have to have a protest march. She said, call the head of the men's organization, the Mattachine Society. If he agrees, we'll jointly sponsor one. Make a long story short, he called me to a meeting. There were 400 gay guys and me. We all voted for a protest march, and a few of us formed a little committee, and that committee became the Gay Liberation Front. But meanwhile, we organized that protest march, and it was maybe 400, 500 people marching around Greenwich Village, and that was the beginning.
Thank you, and thank you for correcting me. I did not know, so thank you.
I don't want to take credit for something I didn't do.
I respect that, and you deserve credit for all the amazing things you have done. So, you were involved in both the feminist and anti-war movements. How did these experiences shape your perspective on gay liberation and the intersection between them?
Okay, let's go back a little farther.
Okay.
My family fled Europe on account of the pogroms. Those relatives who didn't flee were killed in the Holocaust. So I grew up with that understanding of what can happen. And my mother taught me a lot of things, like, for instance, never cross a picket line. She was, in her heart, I think, a socialist. And then came the civil rights movement. And my best friend, the girl who I was in love with but didn't realize what it was in middle school, was black. And I thought, what, my God, what would have happened if she was down south? And I would read the stuff in the newspapers about that, so I was very aware of the civil rights movement, although too young at that time to participate. Then came the anti-war movement, and I got involved with a group of people who went out, I think it was 1963, the summer, took a bus from New York City to D.C. and protested, and then year after year protested the Vietnam War. Meanwhile, I had gotten involved with feminism and was reading everything I could about that. So all of that came together in me and was just like a template for when that gay riot happened, the Stonewall riot. It was like, this is what we do. This is our turn.
That's amazing. Thank you. So you were part of shaping early language around queer liberation. How do you feel about that language and how it's changed over time, and how new generations are using queer language?
Language always changes over time. I mean, I could quote some stuff that I learned in college from Middle English, Chaucer or something, and things are very different now. Language is very different now than it was, say, during the time that my father was a child. So I just figure I'm a bit of a dinosaur, uh, born in 1943, and it's the young people's turn now to decide, to make decisions about what language they use, or for it to really just evolve, and to figure out what they need to do next to build on the work that we did.
We're in a moment right now where both LGBTQ plus and women's rights are very much under attack in the United States and kind of across the world. What lessons from the early movement do you think are most important for people to revisit as we fight those same fights today?
The same thing is true in this country, of course, with Black people's rights, what's going on.
I agree.
Yeah, why and how. Um, what was successful about the Gay Liberation Front, which had not been successful uh, from the previous gay organizations, what they call the homophile organizations, was we reached out and made alliances with other groups. We made alliances with the Black Panthers, with the Young Lords, who were a Puerto Rican group, with feminist groups. Sometimes we had to barge in on meetings and convince people that we needed to, that they needed to take a look at who we were and not just dismiss us. So the Gay Liberation Front was formed by people like me who were radicals within the old gay movement, the old homophile movement, and gay people who were in like socialist organizations who were told to keep their gayness under wraps because they didn't want the socialist organizations to be tarnished by those ucky queer people. And the same thing with the Daughters of Bilitis. We were supposed to keep, those of us who were radical were supposed to keep that down and keep the, we'll just please let us be just like the rest of Middle America. We just want a house with a white picket fence and all that sort of thing. And no, we're not socialists. We just want to be part of Middle America. Well, I didn't want that. I didn't want to be part of an America that was sending my brother, fortunately he didn't go, and people of my generation to kill people on the other side of the world who'd never done anything to us or be killed themselves. So we didn't want to be integrated into that.
Thank you. When you look at younger activists today, what do you wish they better understood about the spirit of the early liberation movement? And how can we honor that legacy that you've helped create while continuing to grow as we continue fighting?
Okay, there were only two things. One of them is what I just said, which is to make alliances with other groups. The other one is, and I don't think this is humanly possible because we are human beings, but to not fight with each other. In every generation, it seems like progressive groups squabble, break up, and get into fights with each other. My best friend from high school, her parents were communists, and there were groups that they knew who were socialists, and they split up with each other and never spoke to each other again because of minor differences in political opinion. The same thing that's happened within the Gay Liberation Front. People split off into different subgroups. Now, fortunately, we didn't stop talking to each other forever and ever, but I had wished even then that we had stayed together as the Gay Liberation Front with more like subcommittees.
Mm.
And the enemy, the people we're supposed to be attacking, is not each other. That's what they call horizontal hostility. The people we have to target are at the top. And they, oh gosh, Jay Gould, 1886, the robber baron in the Gilded Age, who was during a railroad strike is reported to have said, "I can hire half the working class to shoot the other half." And that seems to be happening now, hiring some people at least to be part of ICE and go around brutalizing other people. We have to be really aware of that and ally with each other. Now, as far as the younger generation goes, I can't tell them what to do any more than the older generation in the homophile organizations could tell me what to do, and they tried.
I think that advice, though, is perfect, though, to remember who you're fighting instead of fighting one another, right? And that keeps coming up, and it doesn't have to.
Yeah.
All
And
right. Oh, go ahead, please.
okay, one other thing that has been very important to me now that I have to say to the not just to the younger generation but to all of us. Um, to me, the biggest issues of our time are first climate change, because if the place, if the Earth becomes uninhabitable for most people, our rights aren't going to be worth anything. Like what rights do you have if you're fried? Second, and this is intimately tied with climate change, income inequality. It's much, much worse than it was when I was in Gay Liberation Front. It's worse than it was in the Gilded Age. And the people who are benefiting from it, the handful of billionaires, are making money off destroying the planet. We have to, these are first, should be our first concern. And then after that, all the rest of it, gay rights, women's rights, um, rights of people who are non-white in this country or whatever the minorities are in other countries. So for me, those are the most important things to focus on.
Thank you. That's wonderful advice, and I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming to talk to us today. It was wonderful to hear from you. All right, and now we're moving on to our next guest. Next, we have Robert Emery. Oh, sorry, there we go. Robert Emery is a longtime LGBTQ advocate, philanthropist, and community leader in North Texas. For more than 35 years, he has dedicated his time and resources to advancing equality, preserving history, and supporting the arts. Emery co-founded The Dallas Way, an LGBTQ history project, which documents and preserves the stories of the North Texas queer community, and he currently serves on its board as past president. He was also a founding board member of the Coalition for Aging LGBT, championing visibility and resources for older LGBTQ adults. His many contributions include helping the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum establish its permanent LGBTQ historical presentation and securing Texas's first LGBTQ historical subject marker, Crossroads, through the Texas Historical Commission. A celebrated civic leader, Emery has served on numerous boards Awards and has been named LGBTQ Texan of the Year by the Cavazos. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Sondra, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Terrific.
me okay?
I can hear you just fine. I am still feeling a little emotional from something that Victor talked about when he talked about how AIDS forced an entire generation to come out. For those of us who suffered through the unimaginable horrors of AIDS, it's good to remember something positive that came out of the horror. And Harvey Milk spent all of the 70s telling us to come out. He wanted us to know that uh, that was vitally important for people to see us. And some did and some did not, but AIDS forced everyone to. And it it almost re-traumatizes me just to imagine or to remember that thought. But it was a good thing that came out of it. I'm so honored to be with you all today.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing up that. It struck me too. And I was not there, but it struck me because I'd never thought of it that way. Um, and it was a really beautiful moment. So thank you. Are you ready to start with your questions?
Ready?
All right, here we go.